Welcome to the Glider CEO podcast. I am your host, Mark Michael, broadcasting to you live from a perfectly gray Seattle day, February 13th. This is episode 211, and it is called Reporting from the Middle. Again, hopefully this is not offensive. I feel doing these podcasts, blogs, art, whatnot, it just helps get it off my mind so I can move on with my life. And this idea of reporting from the middle, I'm looking down at my notes as I read this to you, and I'm just going to read what I wrote just so you can kind of hear it. So, we are not rich monetarily. Shh, I know. I think that's the biggest takeaway from the middle, is the perception of money. Okay, look at my car, my house, my school, what am I wearing? Now, of course, rich beyond material possessions is what life is about, right? It's relationships, it's friendships. But the mental space that accepting the middle allows, to me, is freedom. Money is a currency. There is no dropping out of capitalism. So think to your life, when were the moments you were the most happy? Right? And again, we can all joke about, everything from when you're eating dessert, but hopefully in my life, the times that I think about when I'm the most happy, I was with the people I wanted to be with, and it had nothing to do with money. And what you were probably doing, which again, money does enable. But again, reporting from the middle is this idea that again, it's all a matter of perspective. When I talk about middle, I'm not actually even talking about middle class. I'm talking about being stuck in this part of life where there's a wanting of things, and to tell people not to get those things, and and to live your truth, doesn't help anybody. It just doesn't help. It's boring. It's of course you would say that because you have money. It's all the cliche things. And so when I try to think about this particular podcast episode, this particular idea of the middle, it's I think a lot about why I'm drinking Perrier water right now, why I have an iPhone, and again, why I have this laptop or this microphone, and this brand and whatnot. And I think there's a lot of opportunity Wow, I was so emboldened for this episode because I thought it was extremely clear, and now I'm starting to realize it's not as I guess thought out as I was expecting it to be. So I'm going to ramble a little bit about how and why I was thinking about all this. I go between Arizona and Seattle. The world essentially changed for, I would say, everybody at the same time, right around March 2020. And I still have some version of shell shock from it, right? I still remember my mindset coming into 2020. I still remember what we were trying to get done in business, and and then how quickly it was gone. How quickly we were holed up inside and whatnot. And I tell people it took me 3 months to actually lose my mind. And I did this whole matrix of where can we be, and one of the things that the city was shut down, aka Seattle. I looked at a bunch of places in California and even a little bit of Oregon, but I ended up choosing Arizona because of a lot of different reasons. One of the main ones was obvious. Three of the main reasons were space, access, and in a weird way, opportunity, right? I mean, it's the fourth, fifth largest media market in the U.S. I think it's the second, third, fourth, I always forget, largest county in the U.S. So there's a population of people. Obviously, access, getting to Phoenix is extremely easy. Try to get to Palm Springs when you want. I mean, there's 6 flights a day, basically, to Phoenix, in and out of, especially to the West Coast. So opportunity, access, and then space, right? Like, you can buy kind of that home, and you spend a lot of time outside because the weather is nice 8 months of the year, and then there's just 4 months that they're not. Anyway, as we spent more time down there, and we bought some real estate, and we bought another bit of real estate, it became very freeing, right? I felt free down there. I feel like and it's a weird place of, like, you get to, it's in a weird way, it's sort of the feeling I had when I first came to Seattle, where it was an untapped, place that, you can put your stamp on it. And I keep telling people I have not put my stamp on Arizona. I'm not putting my stamp on it during this podcast. I might get to it at the end. I don't know. But the idea was, it was a place that you can make your own, right? And when you start to think about what's important, what's important when I'm there, obviously my health, right? Like, my routine of being outside and running or playing tennis and just working out every day, the people I'm with my parents a lot down there, my wife. We have some family down there, but last year a lot of family came to visit, and the house just had a revolving door of just friends and family, and it was super social and fun, and it energizes you, and none of those things require money, right? None of those things really require, you can do that in a small house, a big house, a medium-sized house, but I find myself still wanting bigger. Like, I want to, like right now, I keep telling, we're either gonna stay and double down, we're gonna sell and get out. Like, there's all those things are up in the air. In this very moment, just for the sake of this podcast episode, I want a bigger house. And then it's like I keep thinking about it, because I remember a year before the pandemic, right? It was funny, we had a loft that we had Good Soul running out of over in Westlake. It's an area in Seattle. And, we had this loft space, and we had it for 2-3 year lease. I forget exactly, definitely 2 years. And we thought, oh, we'll have friends, family stay when they're in town, and everyone's going to come visit. And no one basically stayed there. I had my nephew for a while, and a client or two here and there. But essentially, of the, let's just call it 600, 800 days we had possession of it, it wasn't occupied more than 300. Meanwhile, we're having to pay that added expense for what? Right? We had to make sure it was locked up. We had to make sure that it was clean all the time. We had to make sure it was furnished. That all costs money. For what? Like, those random few moments where we had to support that extra square footage because someone is in town and they can use it, yet then we would have to clean it and everything. We're not there. We don't have it like that, And so I remember telling several friends, oh, I want a 3-bedroom or 2-bedroom or 4-bedroom house, because when you guys come visit or whatever. And I'd always be like, look, we just did this whole experiment. No one came to visit, right? Or not enough to justify it. Or if they're staying in a hotel, we can go out every single night for how much money we're spending on a lease. And so it's again, this idea of embracing the middle, getting out of the middle. I don't really know how to say this. I like to say just reporting from the middle, where you're in this middle part of, your career's going, you have some direction, you have some focus, but the reality is, you're still wanting things that once you get them, realize they don't actually bring you any closer to happiness. It's wanting for the sake of wanting, right? And a lot of my mind space, hopefully it's shrinking. I'm realizing more and more, like, there's certain things, and again, things are material things, right? Like, mentally running a company is so fun. I mean, I can't recommend it enough. At the same time, I realize not everyone has it in them to, go up and down every day like this and whatnot. And so I try to document much of the reality on this podcast and across my social channels, so you can just kind of see a day in the life and just understand if it's even something you want. For me, it works. I don't know any other life. I mean, there was times where I used to just lay down and be like, why is this happening? But when I think about the middle, returning back to the subject, I think about it like each person, and again, if I'm talking to myself, so this is how I think. Like, each person needs to determine what is it in their life that makes them happy. And I would say that number one, you have to love yourself. You have to know yourself and what makes you happy. Because when you're not happy, because you're wanting, because of this, because if I just had this, if I got there, if I made this much more, blah, blah, blah. Like, you're projecting that whether you know it or not. And I believe I probably did project that for years. I would say probably in my early 30s is where I was like, I just wanted. I wanted because we were broke for so long and we had made so many mistakes in business. We thought Devin would never get to a good place. And so once we started doing well, we started buying things. And those things, none of them brought me any happiness. It was always the things that we weren't buying. It was hanging out with friends, right? It was, drinking the wine that we already had at the house. Not even buying wine that we had, or drinks that we had, or cooking with the ingredients we had already. It was all the randomness of life that's fun when you're with the people you want to be with. It wasn't having an extra car, 10 watches, or whatever. And so when I think about the middle, I think a lot of the middle is stuck. And again, I'm sometimes stuck in it too, between this pull of wanting material things, bigger house, more cars, better handbag, whatever the hell it is materially. But I think those that are truly happy get to a place of realizing that those things are actually not bringing them any version of happiness, but doing what they want to do on a daily basis because they want to do it in a certain way and whatnot is what actually brings them happiness. But it's them first, and then it's everything else. So in the middle, if you can cut out the want for material things and instead invest in the ideas or yourself, I think there's a lot of happiness in that. Again, those are my thoughts at 12:04 p.m. on February 13th, 2023, subject to change with new information. But that's how I feel about reporting from the middle. Is in the middle you're stuck in this place of wanting, and again, I'm like I said, I'm basically guilty of it. But as you move kind of away from the middle, just to the right of it or left of it, you get clarity. And that clarity starts with you and what makes you happy. And then to, how your self-awareness of being happy translates to the relationships you have. And so with that, that's the end of the episode. Thanks for tuning in. Hope to help somebody.